Please, honey, your grandmother really needs you right now. She's not feeling well at all. My mom's voice cracked through the phone, thick with the kind of forced concern I'd spent my whole life falling for. I sat in my Indianapolis apartment, bags packed for our long-awaited family cruise, excitement turning to dread in an instant. Of course I'll stay, I said without a second thought. The cruise can wait if Grandma needs me. Those words would haunt me hours later. My name is Tara Smith, and I'm 28 years old. If you'd asked anyone in my family, they'd tell you I'm the dependable one, the one who always drops everything when someone needs help, the responsible daughter, the one who fixes things. That role had become second nature to me until the day I realized just how easily my own family could exploit it. I'd been counting down to this cruise for months. It was supposed to be the first family trip we'd taken in years. My parents, my younger sister Emma, a few aunts and uncles. I'd even taken extra shifts to afford it, treating myself to new summer clothes for the occasion. But the moment my mom said Grandma was in the hospital, all of that felt irrelevant. Family came first, or so I thought. That night, driving to the hospital with my suitcase still in the trunk, my phone lit up with a notification. Emma had posted something on Instagram. My stomach flipped as I opened the app. There they were, my whole family, standing on the deck of the cruise ship, champagne glasses raised in the golden sunset. The caption read, "Best vacation ever, with my favourite people." Cruise life, family time. The car swerved slightly as my hands shook around the steering wheel. I pulled into a gas station parking lot, staring at the screen until the photo blurred. Mom, Dad, Emma, my aunts and uncles. Every smiling face felt like a slap. They were all there. They had planned this together, lied to me together, left me behind. I called the hospital, my heart pounding. They had no record of my grandmother being admitted. I tried calling my mom, my dad, even Emma, straight to voicemail every time. By the time I checked Instagram again, Emma had blocked me. The knot in my stomach hardened into something colder, heavier. It wasn't just that they left me out. They'd built an elaborate lie to make sure I'd stay away. I drove straight to Grandma's house, tears blurring my vision, the betrayal too big to process. When I knocked, she opened the door, perfectly healthy, her usual warm smile quickly turning to concern when she saw my face. "Tara? Sweetheart, what's wrong?" she asked, wrapping me in the familiar lavender-scented hug that had comforted me my whole life. I sat on her worn floral couch, hands shaking as I told her everything. The call, the fake hospital story, the photos. Every word felt heavier than the last. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why would they do this? Why lie about you being sick?" Her face darkened with something I'd never seen before, anger. "Your mother called me last week," she said, her voice tight. "She asked me to go along with it if you came by. She wanted me to say I'd been hospitalized. I refused." The breath left my chest in one sharp exhale. It wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment lie. It was premeditated, planned. The cruise tickets hadn't been cheap. Nearly $2,000 per person for a week-long trip through the Caribbean. I'd worked overtime to pay my share. Had they always planned to exclude me? Had my money been used to upgrade someone else's room? "You know what hurts the most?" I said, staring down at my hands. "They didn't even have to make up a story. They could have just told me they didn't want me there. Instead, they used you. They knew how much I'd drop everything if I thought you needed me." Grandma's hand covered mine, her grip firm despite her age. "Sometimes people tell you exactly who they are, even when they think they're being clever," she said softly. "The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge?" There was a fire in her eyes, a protective spark I hadn't seen before. I didn't know it yet, but Grandma had been paying attention to the cracks in my family for years. and she wasn't nearly as powerless as they thought. As we sat there, my phone buzzed again. A group text from my cousin, who hadn't realised I'd been cut out. She sent a batch of photos from the cruise. I scrolled through them, heart sinking with every swipe. There was Emma in the sundress I'd helped her pick out. Mum and Dad lounging by the pool, sipping cocktails. The whole family dressed up for a formal dinner, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Then I saw it. A photo of my mum wearing the necklace. The diamond necklace Grandma had promised to split between Emma and me when we each turned 30. Except I hadn't gotten my half. Mum had already given the whole thing to Emma. She gave her the necklace, I said, my voice barely a whisper, the one we were supposed to share. Grandma leaned closer, her jaw tightening. That necklace has been in our family for 3 generations. When I passed it to your mother, I gave her clear instructions. It was to be shared between you and Emma, equally. Her hand trembled slightly as she stood crossing the room to her desk. She returned with a thick manila envelope. I didn't want to do this, she said, her voice both sad and resolute. But you deserve the truth. Inside were papers, bank statements, emails, even handwritten notes. Every instance of favoritism, every manipulation, every decision where Emma was favoured and I was pushed aside. She'd been quietly documenting it all for years. My hands shook as I turned the pages. The proof was all there, the family trips I was never invited to, the savings account Grandma had opened for both me and Emma, only to discover my parents had drained my portion. Even the cheque Grandma had given my parents 2 months ago, $15,000 meant to cover everyone's cruise tickets. My ticket money had paid for Emma's upgraded cabin and a private spa package. But why? I asked, my voice barely audible. Why would they do this? Grandma's eyes softened, but her voice was firm. Because they thought you were too strong to need them, and they needed to make sure Emma stayed their favourite. They thought they could take you for granted because you never complained. The weight of years of self-doubt and gaslighting crashed down on me all at once. All those times I'd told myself I was imagining the favouritism, that I was being too sensitive. The truth was sitting right in front of me. They thought I wouldn't fight back, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. They thought they could do this forever. Grandma squeezed my hand. The question is, what are you going to do now? I didn't have the answer yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't that little girl desperate for their approval anymore. This time, I was ready. Grandma's eyes flashed with a determination I'd never seen before. Because that's what people do when they know they're wrong, she said firmly. They make you doubt yourself, but not anymore, Tara, not anymore. The family cruise was set to last 7 days. I sat in my Indianapolis apartment the next morning, surrounded by Grandma's meticulously organised documentation. My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. Mum says you're spreading lies about us. Why can't you ever be happy for once instead of trying to ruin everything? I stared at the message, my hands clenching around the phone. Even now they were trying to make me the villain. Even after using Grandma's health as a lie to cut me out, they were twisting the narrative. But this time, I didn't shrink. Instead, I did something I'd never dared to do before. I told the truth. I opened my social media account and posted, "Funny how lying about Grandma being hospitalized just to exclude me from a family vacation somehow makes me the bad guy. Even funnier how the entire cruise was paid for with money meant to include me." I attached Emma's best vacation ever photo for good measure. Within minutes the post exploded. Family friends, people who had known us for years, commented in shock. Aunts, cousins, even a few childhood neighbours messaged me privately, confessing they'd always sensed something off about how I was treated. Now they had the full picture. My phone rang. It was my father. I almost let it go to voicemail, but Grandma's voice echoed in my mind. "Stand your ground. You've done nothing wrong," I answered. "Take down that post immediately." Dad's voice was cold, controlled, the tone he used when trying to intimidate. "You're embarrassing this family." "No, Dad," I said, my voice calm. "You embarrassed this family when you lied about Grandma being sick and used her money to leave me behind. I'm just telling the truth." "That's not how it happened," he snapped. "We needed a break from your constant—" "My constant what?" I cut him off. "My constant reliability? My constant help with Grandma? My constant efforts to be part of this family no matter how much you shut me out?" The line went silent. When Dad finally spoke again, the coldness was replaced with something darker, a thinly veiled threat. "If you don't take that post down and publicly apologize, you'll regret it," he said. "You have no idea what you're stirring up." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you," he said. "Your mother and I have protected you for years. There are things you don't know. If you want to air dirty laundry, remember, you're not the only one who knows secrets." The call ended. My hands trembled, but not from fear. For the first time I realized they were afraid of me finally seeing the whole truth. I called Grandma immediately. "They're trying to scare me," I told her. "Dad said they've been protecting me from something, but wouldn't say what." Grandma's voice was calm but firm. "Go check your email," she said. "It's time you knew everything." My fingers shook slightly as I opened my laptop. Sitting at the top of my inbox was an email from Grandma with the subject line, "The truth about your trust." The attached document was dated 25 years ago, a trust agreement I'd never seen before. My maternal grandfather had left behind a fortune when he passed away, earmarked for all his grandchildren to inherit at age 30. The trust was worth over $2 million, but that wasn't the most shocking part. A series of bank statements showed regular withdrawals over the years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money intended for my future had been used to pay for Emma's dance classes, private school, college tuition, and even her wedding. My share had been spent on everything but me. "They've been stealing from you since you were a toddler." Grandma's voice was tight with anger when I called her back. "Your mother convinced the trustee, her brother Michael, to grant her early access, claiming the money was for your benefit, but it all went to Emma." I felt physically ill. $500,000, money meant for me, was gone. Meanwhile, I had taken out student loans and worked nights to pay for college. Just then, another email arrived. This time, it was from Uncle Michael. "Tara, I can't stay silent anymore. What they did with the cruise money was the last straw. I've attached everything, every withdrawal, every lie. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped it years ago." The files laid it all bare, a decades-long scheme. They hadn't just spent my money on Emma, they'd been skimming off the trust for themselves too. The cruise was just the final insult. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked Grandma, my voice shaking. "I only discovered the full scope a few months ago," she said. "I confronted your mother. She swore they'd repay everything. That's why I gave them the cruise money. It was a test." "And they failed," I said, anger replacing shock. "They failed," Grandma agreed, "but they also gave us everything we need, proof." She paused. "Check the second attachment I sent." I opened it. My heart stopped. It was Grandma's will, newly updated. She had made me the sole heir to her estate, including controlling shares of the family company where my father was the CEO. "They're about to learn," Grandma said, "that actions have consequences." The next morning, I met Uncle Michael at a quiet cafe downtown. He looked exhausted, his guilt written all over his face as he slid a thick folder across the table. "Copies of everything," he said. "Every transfer, every forged document, every lie." I flipped through the papers, disbelief turning to cold resolve. "They're already panicking," Michael added. "They've called me 6 times since I sent you that email." "What are they saying?" "That they were protecting you," he said, disgust curling his lip. "That they were only trying to make sure you didn't waste the money." Then he handed me one final document, a list of recent offshore wire transfers. "They're planning to leave the country," he said grimly. The cruise wasn't just a vacation, it was a test to see if they could travel without raising red flags. "They've been moving money into accounts in Emma's name." My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. "I know what you're doing, you jealous freak. You'll never ruin us. By the time you figure it all out, we'll be gone, and you'll have nothing." I showed the message to Michael. His face paled. "We have to act now," he said. I called Grandma. "They're at the company right now," she said immediately. "Your father's cleaning out his office. Security just called me." "Can they stop him?" "They can do better than that," Grandma said. "The police and the FBI financial crimes team are on their way, but you need to get there too, Tara. You're the controlling shareholder now." I felt my pulse steady for the first time in days. "Do they know that yet?" "Not yet," she said, "which means you have the upper hand." I drove to the company headquarters, arriving just as my parents walked out, arms full of boxes. Emma was with them, nervously glancing around. They froze when I stepped out of my car. "What are you doing here?" Dad's voice was harsh, but there was a fear behind it. "That's funny," I said calmly. "I was about to ask you the same thing, especially since you're removing items from my company." Emma's laugh was brittle. "Your company? What are you even talking about?" I held up my phone showing the updated ownership records. "Grandma transferred her controlling shares to me this morning, and those boxes you're carrying, they belong to me." Police lights flashed behind me as FBI agents stepped out of unmarked cars. Grandma and Uncle Michael pulled in just behind them. It was over. "You don't understand," my mother pleaded, her voice trembling, her carefully rehearsed mask finally cracking. "Everything we did was for this family." "No," I said, my voice steady. "Everything you did was for Emma. And now you are planning to run away with what's left of my money." I turned to my sister, who stood frozen beside our parents, her eyes red-rimmed but still filled with that entitled disbelief, as though consequences were a foreign language she couldn't understand. "Did you enjoy the cruise, Emma?" I asked, my voice deceptively calm. "Was it worth it?" Tears spilled down her cheeks, but for once they weren't the kind that got her what she wanted. The FBI agents moved in, asking for identification and instructing my parents to set the boxes down. My father tried to pull Emma away, shielding her like she was a helpless child, but it was too late. The truth had finally caught up with all of them. 3 months later, I sat with Grandma in her garden in Indianapolis, the crisp autumn air swirling the first fallen leaves across the yard. We shared our morning coffee like we had so many times before, but this time there was a calmness in the air that hadn't been there in years. The FBI investigation had uncovered far more than we originally knew. My parents hadn't just stolen from my trust fund. They'd been siphoning money from the family company for over a decade. Personal expenses, luxury vacations, and private loans had all been quietly paid for through fake accounts and misreported expenses. Now, they were facing federal charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. On top of the criminal case, shareholders had filed civil suits against both of them for mismanagement and breach of fiduciary duty. Everything they had tried to build, their reputation, their wealth, their comfortable life, was crumbling faster than they could grasp it. Emma, to my mild surprise, had made a deal with prosecutors. She agreed to testify against our parents in exchange for immunity. Apparently, she had been complicit in some of the financial maneuvers, but not to the extent of facing criminal charges herself. She had left Indiana entirely, moving to Minnesota to live with a distant cousin. Forced, for the first time in her life, to support herself without our parents' constant safety net, she now worked part-time at a daycare. Her last message to me was a long, meandering apology. She admitted she had been jealous of the attention I got from Grandma, the bond we shared, and that she had gone along with our parents' schemes out of fear of losing her own position in the family hierarchy. But apologies, no matter how long or tearful, couldn't erase the years of betrayal or the choices she made. Some wounds ran too deep for words to fix. "You know," Grandma said, setting down her coffee cup, "your grandfather would be so proud of how you handled all of this. He always said money reveals people's true characters." I smiled faintly, the weight of the past few months settling into something less sharp, something that felt almost like closure. "I never wanted any of this," I admitted quietly. "I just wanted to be treated fairly, to belong." Grandma reached across the small garden table, her hand warm and steady as she squeezed mine. "Sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as its greatest betrayals." I knew she was right. My parents' lies, the exclusion, the years of being overlooked, they had forced me to find my own strength. They had pushed me to uncover my voice and take back control of my own story. At the company, I had implemented sweeping changes, tighter financial oversight, independent audits, and clear protections to ensure no future executive could exploit their position the way my father had. More importantly, I had created a scholarship program for employees' children, a way to give other kids the opportunities I'd had to fight for myself. The business was thriving, built on transparency and integrity rather than favoritism and fraud. It had taken a long time, but I was finally proud of the family legacy I was creating, one that honored my grandparents' values, not my parents' greed. "You turned their betrayal into something powerful," Grandma said softly. "That's what makes you different from them." I nodded, a sense of peace settling deep inside me. That cruise, the trip they thought would be the perfect escape, the ultimate celebration of excluding me, had become the very thing that exposed them. It wasn't the vacation of a lifetime. It was the first step in their downfall. And for me, it was the start of a life I was building on my own terms. A life where my worth wasn't dictated by my parents' twisted view of family, but by the strength I had found in myself.